Watch Stephen McKinnon get called out by Vassy Kapelos live during this interview.
On the question of sort of whether that sort of rush timeline is merited, I know that you're talking about Conservatives who provided their support, who obviously do represent a large portion of Canadians, but we've heard from a lot of other people at the Senate, for example, over just the last 24 hours, because even that is very condensed, particularly Indigenous leaders who feel as though this is a direct affront to them, the speediness with which you want to see this pass.
Well, one thing that we can ensure, we'll be dialoguing with rights holders, with local Indigenous communities, Indigenous nations right across this country. Ministers have fanned out. Many conversations have been had, and many will continue to be had. Remember, too, that there are significant Indigenous nations, communities in this country who want to participate in major projects of national significance. These are opportunities for economic development, for jobs in many of those places. So there are people who are really advocating for this bill. But overall, Vassy, what I will say is this is what we got elected on. Page 1 of our platform begins to talk about dismantling these interprovincial trade barriers that hold back our economy, hold back people from being able to take their trades or their professions from coast to coast to coast into different jurisdictions, and accelerates the consideration of major national projects. These projects will be trade enabling. They will be expansions of our ability to trade with other nations. They will, of themselves, ignite further growth in this country. People, people who watch us, they get very cynical about our ability to execute these projects. This is the government's response to that. This is our response to the tariff threat from south of the border. We have an economic imperative. We have to accelerate growth in Canada. And this is an exciting way to get at that.
If they're frustrated or cynical, I mean, it's based on processes that your party, when it was in government for the last 10 years, put in place. And my question with respect wasn't about the...
To be fair, they're based on processes that...
Based on her facial expression here, you'd think Stephen McKinnon briefly shape-shifted into Justin Trudeau. Stephen McKinnon simply avoided the question, lied his way through it, and then when he got called out on it, refused to even listen and just simply started talking over her.
They're based on processes that have grown, indeed, over years and across governments.
I mean, the Impact Assessment Act was your government's process.
Many times overlapping at the federal level, and then they themselves overlapping with provincial regulations and provincial assessments. So it is important to disentangle those. We cannot sit here and say every regulation in every jurisdiction, in every field in the country is perfect. And so this is the government saying...
Sure, but I was, to be fair, by members of cabinet over the last 5 years, I was expressly on multiple occasions told just that the Impact Assessment Act allowed for the building of big projects in an expedited manner. And now you're conceding with the introduction of this that was not the case.
Well, it has enabled projects, but it's too slow. It takes too long. These are complicated projects. Indeed, they merit rigorous assessment. They will continue to get rigorous assessment. There will continue to need to be prior and informed consent from Indigenous nations. We will continue to protect the environment. None of that is sacrificed. However, we will be accelerating these projects. This is important. Canadians are demanding this, and this is our response to that.
So my question to you on that is, how is that possible? How are you going to continue, for example, to adhere to the duty to consult free and prior informed consent, plus environmental considerations? How are you going to do all of that and expedite the process to get it built? Because how I understand the bill is, if something gets on this list, it is approved. The onus has shifted. It's de facto approved, and then the conditions are established thereafter. But
yes,
there's also stuff set out in this bill that says the minister can, in charge of it, can say, I don't want that condition.
This is meant to elevate projects of national significance, projects that will have been identified after a process of consulting with Indigenous peoples, consulting with all the premiers in the 13 provinces and territories. So by definition, they will be exceptional projects, growth-spurring projects. Over the longer term, the government has an ambition and a commitment to make this process go quicker for all projects so that we can aspire to growth in this country, so that we can aspire to build things that will, yes, make more dynamic economies in Indigenous nations, make more possible diversifying our trade. These are good things, Vassy, and we should be celebrating that this government is pivoting to achieving that economic growth that I think Canadians all know, certainly the government does, that we need.
We should be celebrating the fact that this government is removing its own terrible policies. What an absolute idiot. Leave it to the Liberals to create 100% of the problems and then pat themselves on the back when they fix it. This is what happens when you don't have a plan. You constantly talk about, oh, we're gonna build all these amazing projects that will get approved, but you never tell us which projects you're going to prioritize or how much they're going to cost. They keep saying that they've shortened the process, but we still need consent from majority of premiers, indigenous groups, and X, Y, and Z. I've said it time and time again, nothing is going to get built when you need a majority consensus, and all of these premiers can't even think on the same page. The Carney Liberal government might be the most hypocritical government I think we've seen. A majority of these ministers were Trudeau ministers, and are now walking back all of their policies that they implemented and supported for 10 years. There is no way environmental extremists in that party are going to sit there and just allow pipelines to be built or mines to be opened or whatever the case is. We're not dealing with a different party. As much as they want to sit there and tell us this is a new government, it's really not. And if you thought the government's clarity was bad, we're now into the summer recess where they don't really have to speak publicly that much at all anymore. Maybe the odd reporter interview like we just saw here. Anyway, I'd like to know what you think down in the comments section below. Hit that like button, hit that sub button if you are new, and thank you very much for watching.